Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me once again for day 2 of my placement diary. Today will be a more condensed video, definitely more condensed than yesterday where we went for almost an hour straight talking, so that mustn't have been fun for anyone to listen to, especially myself in the future. Apologies for the bad lighting, it's just that time of day I'm afraid. So, let's just jump straight into it. Today went in, 9 o'clock usual. We were a little bit later to start today. I think a lot of children were just arriving a little bit later than usual. Wasn't too much of a problem. I was greeted at the door by a few of the children, which was nice. They seem to remember who I am, so that's a good start. Yeah, the very beginning... Sorry, just 1 second. Until the nursery started, until everyone was arriving, I learned that what happens is the children just get free play. So this just means that they engage with the resources that are around about them and play freely until, it's not a time killer, it's a productive way to spend time. And that was pretty useful. A lot of children were playing with Legos or other such building materials. Some were drawing. Whenever they draw, they have to write their name on their drawing, or to the best of their ability write their name on their drawing, so that was really good. And then circle time commenced. Before circle time commenced, upon my arrival, I liaised with one of the parents, which was definitely something new for me. I really enjoyed that. I spoke to, obviously I can't name names at all because that would be unethical, but the parent I spoke to was seemingly interested in the degree that I was doing, so I just kind of filled her in on that. I let her know what the nature of the placement was, and we seemed to get along quite well. So having that relationship in place with a parent as well as with the children makes me feel a lot comfortable, and I believe it probably gave her a sense of comfort as well, in that she could trust me with her child. That was the impression I got. I obviously don't know because I didn't have a lot of time to speak to the woman, but that was something that happened and I thought it would be relevant to mention. So, circle time did commence, and to build upon what I was saying yesterday, the song that they sing at the beginning is called the Hello Song. So what happens first of all is that the register gets taken, and then the children will all sing this Hello Song. And like I said yesterday, just to recap once again, I think that's a really good way of loosening the children off, waking them up, gets them ready for the day's activities, in my opinion. And during circle time, the practitioners would, one practitioner would lead, and she would ask the children what they did the night before. So that would consist of, they asked the child whose birthday it was yesterday, they asked her, what did you do later on? Now the way that the children are selected to talk, as it were, to share with the circle, is that it's the ones who are sitting the nicest, the ones who are the quietest, the ones who aren't shouting out. This is preparing them later for school life, I believe. So that's really good. It's starting to condition them a little bit to be attentive and to listen instead of just being self-centered as children want to be. Let's look here. The questioning of what the kids were doing was really good. The questions that were being asked were of a high quality. They were asking why did they enjoy it, just encouraging the use of further language, encouraging the use of communication, encouraging them to really expand on what they were saying, so that hopefully they will be able to do it without prompt in the future. It was mentioned that show and tell would be a segment, so upon further investigation of that, I found out that show and tell happens fairly frequently, but it's never scheduled. It's just something that happens when the children show an interest in it, and it happens group by group. So one group, say the red group, would say, we have something to share, I have something to share, a member of the group, so then everyone would find something to share, and then they would share it with the rest of the nursery. I think this is really good. It really encourages the children to interact with each other on a more professional level, as opposed to just playing all the time. It encourages them to actively discuss with each other, and it encourages them to not even, I wouldn't say it goes far to say it's to critique, but it's to describe why the thing that they are showing is good, and asking the participants in the audience why they think it's good and why it might be good. Say it was a pen, this is my favourite pen, what do you like about the pen? It's green, that's my favourite colour. Someone in the audience, that's my favourite colour as well. Someone else in the audience, oh, that's not really my favourite colour. It's like early stages of debate almost, and I think that's really interesting. That'll be good to see. That's going to happen next Wednesday, so I'll be sure to take plenty of notes on that. Speaking of Circle Time still, the WoW vouchers that I mentioned yesterday are indeed shared at Circle Time. So one child had a WoW voucher from her parent, and that was for sleeping in her own bed entirely through the night and getting up to go to the toilet when she needed to. This was obviously one of the younger children, maybe one of the 2-year-olds, so that was a big achievement for her. And that was good to share that with the rest of the nursery. The children seem to be really supportive of one another, if that makes sense. They seem to be really happy when one of their peers gets one of these WoW vouchers, or is happy about something. Very good. I also noticed that during Circle Time again, Child L, as I will now refer to him as, used the word goad again, as in goad instead of went. Now, the practitioners in the circle didn't correct this. Now, that could have been for more than one reason. I didn't get a chance to ask them about it in further depth today, but that will be something that I'll definitely pick up on tomorrow. But I think by weighing up the positive and negatives, the child's level of speech is of a pretty high standard. He can string together a lot of conversation, and he can hold a conversation, he can hold his own, but he just maybe trips up on words every now and again. Now, the child used goad for the second time and wasn't corrected, so the positives to this is, by not singling it out, this is just me theory crafting, of course this may not be the reason, and I will double check this, but if I was to theory craft, I would say the positive, the child is not the most confident of children perhaps, or maybe he's not very, he can maybe take criticism a little bit too harshly. So the positives of not correcting the word goad is maybe just because he is speaking, because he is confident in speaking, you don't want to knock that confidence, you want to just keep it going, and then maybe when it develops a little bit more and he can maybe take criticism a little bit better, then that would be the time to maybe egg him on and say, oh look, see the word goad, is that correct? No, it's the word went. And say it in a way in which it encourages him to sort of go away from using that and apply the grammar rule, but without knocking his confidence, if you understand. But the negatives are, the child may continue to make this mistake, and the child is not being corrected, he just assumes that this is right. Whether he's being corrected at home or not, I don't know, because obviously I'm not at home with the child, but that's something definitely to note as well. I will mention that to his group leader tomorrow and see what she has to say on the matter, and I will report back to you with that. Now, moving swiftly onward, the children do the weather in the morning. Now, this is something I didn't mention yesterday at all. During Circle Time in the morning, the children have a weather game / activity, we'll call it, wherein they will describe the weather. So they'll say, the practitioner will say, what is the weather like today, what's happening outside. One child will be hands up, it's sunny. The practitioner will ask, okay, it's sunny, and what else? Another child's hand up, it's cold. Okay, it's sunny and cold, how does it feel outside? Another child hand up, it might be frosty, there was frost on the windows. Again, just pushing for more language to be used, pushing for descriptive words, pushing for adjectives, and it's really a clever way of encouraging the use of language, especially for children who maybe not speaking as much. Now, they don't always pick hands up, sometimes they will pick children who maybe don't speak as much as others, and that of course will encourage them to perhaps gain a bit of confidence in front of a group. So I really do enjoy that aspect. After they describe the weather, the children have is it a snowman? No, it's a bear. I wanted to say it was a snowman. It's a bear that they dress up. Now, the bear is kind of like a Velcro / magnetic framework, where it's just a bear and a pair of pants, I think. And the children will dress the bear accordingly. So today, because it was sunny, but also pretty cold, they recognised that it would be sunny because I think they put sunglasses on because it was sunny, but they also put a nice woolly jumper on them because it was still cold. Now, this is a good activity for the children, I believe. It's kind of making them understand the importance of what they have to wear during different weathers and how different weathers can affect the climate. It's kind of the very, very early stages of almost biology, if I was to... Or maybe not biology. Sciences of sorts, environmental studies, geography perhaps, I think would be a better example of what is maybe the starter off. It's discussing the weather, it's getting them involved, it's letting them know that the weather's changing, it's making them aware of seasons, it's making them aware of times, making them aware that things are changing. And for 2, 3, 4 and 5-year-olds, I think that's really important because they haven't obviously experienced as many summers and winters as those who are in primary school and are perhaps not as equipped to deal with it, I would say. Okay, after the circle time happened, it was back to free play, wherein the children would just continue to play with all the resources that were available to them. Some of these resources were different from the ones yesterday. It just depends on what the children, 1, want to play with, and 2, what the practitioners put out that day. So this can vary quite dramatically, but the resources can vary, but the activities stay pretty similar. I mean, yesterday it was Lego, today it was connectable blocks. So it's very similar, just different resources. And it's encouraging children to maybe find the links between certain things, like, oh, I could do this with Lego, can I do it with these blocks? Basic problem solving, I guess, would be what that's an indicator of. During the free play segment, all the children just kind of got on with their own thing, but obviously it was all supervised by the adults. And then we moved back onto group work. So I stuck with the group that I was with yesterday, who have the young child who speaks Spanish. Again, she seemed to sit fairly quietly throughout the entirety of the activity until she was directly questioned. Now that was... I wouldn't say it was alarming because it's still nursery children. She might just be a quiet girl. She might not have coming out of your shell yet. Obviously she maybe feels a little bit self-conscious about not speaking English as a first language. But that's the sort of thing that can definitely change, and I believe will change fairly soon. It might even be that she's just nervous in front of me. So that is also something to take into consideration. I've only interacted with this group twice, so I can't really make any sound judgments as of yet, but hopefully by the end of the week I'll have a better idea of where I stand. The task focused on baking once again. That seems to be the theme for the week, is baking. Yesterday obviously they made the Play-Doh using materials that we'd use for baking, and today we just laid out all the baking materials on a table. Now originally I kind of was a bit bewildered by this activity. When it was explained to me, I didn't really understand what the purpose was, but once I seen it in action, it kind of clicked for me. The activity that was carried out was that all the baking materials were laid out on the table. So there was flour, there was flour, sugar, scales, measuring spoons, a big spoon, and a bowl, we'll say. I think there was more than that, but there was at least 6 items on the table. Now what the practitioner did, that is in charge of the group, she said, have a look at these items, and then she described them all. This is a spoon. What colour is the spoon? The spoon is blue. These are varying sizes, measuring spoons, and all in one keyring-like setup. And here is sugar. What's sugar like? Sugar is white, and just got the children to describe them. Again, encouraging the development of language. I know I'm sounding like a broken record so far, but this is really what the activity was all about. Was the development of language. So she made them describe in detail what each item was, and then covered it up with a blanket. Now it was at this point she kind of lost me. I was kind of wondering what was happening here. Sorry, let's just change the lighting. It was at this point I kind of wondered where this activity was heading. I didn't really understand at the time. It wasn't explained to me beforehand. Things are fairly fast moving in the nursery. There's not really a lot of time to sit and explain. What she did was she covered it up with the blanket, and then asked all the children to cover their eyes, which was the most difficult part, because a lot of children will want to peek and will peek. The children would all cover up their eyes. She'd put her hand under the blanket, take an item, pull it away, and then that would be the item missing. She would then reveal the rest of the items to the children, then they'd have to identify which one was missing. Each child had a turn at this, and they really found it interesting. I have to be said, she continued to reinforce the language development aspect. They were always like, what was missing is like, they didn't know. They didn't know what was missing originally, so she just turned around and says, well, I'll give you a clue. Because obviously they had described it in detail beforehand. It was blue. Then that would set it off. The spoon was blue, so it's the spoon that's missing. It was a really good, just sort of investigative activity, and the children were fully engaged, apart from two children, who we'll just call child A and B for the time being, who were fairly disengaged throughout, and that's more a behaviour aspect, and the children do not work well together. It's the two boys that I think I mentioned yesterday who were good friends. They continued to sort of disrupt the lesson, but in the way that she dealt with that was again pretty standard. She just split them up, put them to different sides of the table, and that started to that really, the rest of the children really enjoyed what was happening. Okie dokie. So after the group baking we went to lunch. After lunch we went outside for extended play in the garden. The reason that the play was extended is we all played outside, in which I got an opportunity to bond with the children again. A lot of the children have really taken to me, so much to the point where there was almost an issue this afternoon with personal space. Some of the children are very affectionate, as I mentioned yesterday, but two or three were very clingy, shall we say. They latched onto my leg and would not let go. So the way in which I had to deal with that, I put on my cam head. I removed the child from my leg, just hands around the shoulder, removed from the leg, went down to their level and said, look, I appreciate that you want to, give me a hug and stuff, but I'm trying to remember what the exact words I used were, but it was along the lines of, I know that I appreciate that's you want to show me that you're liking me with your hugs and stuff, but it's a very inappropriate way to interact with a member of staff. And then they just kind of nodded and said, okay. And it's like, so what are we not going to do anymore? It's like, I'm not going to cuddle onto your leg. It's like, what is acceptable levels of contact for me and you? And it's like, if we're holding hands, if we're leading you somewhere. And then that was it. So that's brilliant. The children do understand. They've come to terms with the fact that I'm not, I'm not a member of their family. I'm not allowed to do these sort of things. And they took that really well, which was brilliant. I kind of foresaw that being a problem yesterday, and I felt very uncomfortable. But after dealing with the incident this afternoon, I feel a lot more confident and a lot more equipped to deal with things like this in the future. So that was a big load off my mind, definitely. Now, lunch, before I went off on that crazy tangent, not lunch, sorry, the play outside was extended because one child was sick on the ramp to the entrance of the nursery, and we obviously didn't want to trample children through that to go back inside. So this resulted in a very, very long play outside. A lot of the children were getting a little bit cold, although they wouldn't admit to it. We could physically notice them shivering. So until that was cleaned up, we had to stay outside. The staff, I believe, dealt with this really well. They hats off to them. They extended the outside activities. They had games planned. They had big, massive circles. Songs were sung. Children were all engaged at all times. They really done their utmost to entertain the children, and they succeeded without a hitch. There were no problems. No one was getting unrestless. Yeah, just really well done overall. Upon returning back inside, I went into the office to sort of catch up on some busy work, because there's a lot of paperwork involved with this placement. I have learned the hard way. And I had a small meeting with the nursery manager in which we discussed the we just kind of reinforced the discussion that we had yesterday about the nature of the placement and stuff. But then we went on to talk about insurance and other sort of areas like that, just to do with health and safety, so that I could fill in the relevant forms for the placement folder, which again will be in that placement folder. I think that's more or less everything. Let's have a look at the notes. Yeah, this is something I wanted to mention. The staff were telling me that the nursery is noisy basically all of the time. Now, that's something I'm going to have to adjust to, because high levels of noise in a primary school is something that, as a teacher, I really just don't tolerate. I don't force children to work in silence, not by any stretch of the imagination, unless the activity specifically needs children to work individually and in silence. Then I am more than happy to have open discussion between tables, between peer groups, if it is related to the work, like it has been in the past. But in terms of chatter and loud noises sort of things, I'm completely have like no patience for it, and I deal with that pretty harshly in the primary school. Whenever noise levels get really high, I don't get angry. I stay calm at all times, of course, like I'm not going to be a big evil person, but I first of all calmly ask, can you please keep the noise down? And then I say, can you keep the noise down? And I raise my own voice, and if it needs to happen, I will shout. Now, that's opinions divided on shouting in the classroom between teachers, but I personally like it because I do have a loud voice. When I'm putting on my teacher voice, I have a very loud voice, and it's not to intimidate the children as such, but it's just to kind of keep that level of control. If I can rise above their noise level, then that kind of makes them, I wouldn't say scared to overdo it, but it kind of reinforces that authority that I should have in the classroom. But where I'm going with this is basically, in a nursery, that kind of all goes out the window, because at the end of the day, the children are 2, 3 and 4 years old, 5 in some cases. You don't shout really loudly at children that age, because they get scared. They don't like loud noises. They're still developing. They're not at the level yet where they can kind of understand that as much, I believe anyway, and that seems to be the belief of the nursery staff as well. It takes a lot for one of them to raise their voice. That is the atmosphere and the environment in the nursery that I'm working in. So to not be able to do that has been quite a hindrance, because I would normally be not horrible to the children, but I would usually say, that's not a nice way to do that, or why are you being so rude? Can you tell me that? Just raise my voice and kind of assert the dominance, but it's kind of been a big no-no so far. So I will have to adjust to the noise level. I come home with splitting sore heads 2 nights in a row now, but hopefully that will change. Other things that I noticed today. There's a newsletter at the entrance to the nursery. I didn't notice this yesterday. As soon as you come down the ramp, there is a notice board right in front of you. Now this is brilliant, I believe, for communicating with parents, because they physically can't avoid it when they come in. They walk down the ramp and it's right there, and that has what they've been doing this week as evidence of their work. It has the WOW vouchers go right there, right on the wall, so that all the parents can see and be proud of their children's achievements, and I think that's really well done. The nursery offers a condensed session once, again it's not scheduled, it's once every maybe year or so, wherein children and adults will both come to the nursery, and the adults have to participate with the children. So the practitioners basically just have a long, like a condensed version of the day that they lead with the parents, and the parents have to get involved. So I think that's really good. It kind of puts the parents in the shoes of the children and lets them know how their day goes, and it lets them experience firsthand what is happening with their children. So that will give them a huge sense of security, because children are very honest. I mean, if the nursery were doing something that was out of the norm, or if they were completely changing it just to impress the parents, it would only take one child to go, this isn't what we normally do, and they will do that. I've noticed that they are very truthful, and they sometimes say things that they probably shouldn't really say, but are not really old enough to know that that's not an appropriate thing. So that's pretty interesting, I think. And finally, just as a closing thing, I found out the rules. Now, the rules of the nursery, I didn't even consider this. I didn't really consider there would be rules, but the rules are all made by the children. So again, hats off to the management team there. That's a really good way of doing things. That's how it's done in the primary school in most cases, and that's going to prepare them for the future, I believe. Each rule is posted up on the wall in a sort of cut out sheet which has been laminated, and it has the child's name who came up with it next to it. I'll just read you a couple. I'm not going to go through them all. I think there's 13, but one of them is: be nice and give friends a cuddle. We are sharing. We play nicely. We wait to take our turn. We say, please can I have it after you when playing with toys. So basically, by giving control of the rules to the children, effectively it really just helps to reinforce them, because if you're saying, no, you don't do this because I said so, then it kind of encourages rebellion, because it's an authority, you know. But if the children make the rules themselves, then they're only letting themselves down. That sounds a very cliche thing to say, but at the end of the day, that's really what's happening there. So I think that was a really, really good way to do that. I said closing and I'm an absolute liar. There's a couple of more things here. They have an entire wall dedicated to the Curriculum for Excellence. I think that's really good, especially for visitors. They can see exactly what's happening. They can see the experiences and outcomes in which the nursery are focusing on at the time, and any information that they need regarding the curriculum right there, right in the middle of the wall. So that's really good. During group child knows. Okay, I'll come back to that one. Linked back to yesterday's words. Memory game. Aha, right, so going back to, just as this is the closing one this time, I promise. Going back to the memory game that I was discussing earlier with the baking products, I noticed that one child, completely out of the blue, I think she was only 3, had used the word measuring, and that for me, I completely taken aback. I was like, wow, that's a fairly complex word, especially for a child of her age. She, when the practitioner held up the sort of measuring spoon, the child, sorry, not the measuring spoon, the scales, there were scales in it as well. She held up a set of scales, and the child said, that's a measuring spoon. No, sorry, a measuring stick. Which was interesting, because it is a scale. Now, I'm wondering if the child knew this or not, but this scale obviously is to measure the weights of things, so that was explained to the child, and I think she said, yeah, that's why I said it. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but the fact that the children are making those links, I think, is pretty good. It's testament to how well the nursery are kind of coping with their development, and I was really impressed, I have to admit. That you use it just to hear this like tiny voice coming from me going, measuring, I was like, wow, that really impressed me. Now, what I liked about that activity as well is that the children were remembering their words from yesterday. They were remembering the differences between flour and sugar and salt, cloudy, puffy, and I'm saying granulated, that was never used. Just all those words from yesterday, they were remembering it and they were bringing them back up. So they're obviously seeing the links between things, and I think that's really good. So that's probably going to do it for today. Thank you once again for joining me. Be sure to join me tomorrow on day 3. What's significant about tomorrow, the nursery manager will not be in, so the practitioners will be sort of single-handedly running the nursery, and I'm just going to do my best to fit in. What I did forget to mention, which I will mention now, is that on a Wednesday, that's when the planning gets done. So that's when the staff all sit down and they plan for the week ahead. Now, tomorrow, with it being the planning day, I intend to go in with my ideas, the activities that I want to carry out, the way in which I want to do it, the groups I want to work with, and just start putting the wheels in motion. Now that I'm kind of used to the environment, that's how I spent the first couple of days. Now that I'm used to everything that's going on, I can go in, I can tell them this is what I would like to do, they can help fit that around me, and at the end of the day I still have 5 full weeks with these kids to do all of my research with, so that's going to be really good fun. So thank you once again, and I will see you tomorrow.